Hi everyone, my name is Tierney McLean and I am the ECMS trumpet intern. This is our third attempt at this video this morning and hopefully it is working for us. So if you can hear me, drop me a comment and let me know. Again, the third time is usually the charm, so I figure our third attempt at this video should be really good. So thanks for tuning in this morning. We are talking about all things trumpet, how it works, why it works, and how much fun it is to play Star Wars. So if you've got any curiosity at all for trumpet or brass instruments, you are in the right place. So let's get started. First things first, let's hear a little bit of trumpet playing because that's the real fun part. So let's dive right in. And that's a little piece of what we call a bugle call on trumpet. So tuck that in the back of your brain. We're going to come back to that in a second. We're going to need that. So first, let's get some terminology going because we're going to be talking a lot about how the trumpet works. And so we're going to need to be able to talk about this in similar language. So this is my trumpet, and it's got this little silver piece out front that comes out. And this is a very well-named piece of the trumpet. It is called the mouthpiece because it goes on your mouth. And you can make some funny little duck noises with that. It's pretty good. And then it fits into the trumpet, and it goes into this lead pipe, not a lead pipe, not playing a game of Clue, but a lead pipe. It leads the air in, and we have our main tuning slide there. And then it comes through these valves that go up and down. We're always tempted to call them buttons, but we call these valves, and those help us quite a bit with different notes. And then the air eventually comes through this big long pipe and out the bell. The bell's kind of resonant, and that's where it gets its name. So those are the different pieces of the trumpet, and we'll definitely be talking a lot about the valves and the mouthpiece. So did you notice anything weird about that first tune that I played? Because there was something kind of strange about that one. I'll play it again. Keep an eye on it and see if you can spot what's weird about this. Did you see me use those valves at all? Because I didn't use them at all. And that's what's weird about this tune or about that piece. That's what makes it a bugle call, actually, is that we don't need our fingers. We don't need our valves at all to play that. So I could play that tune with my hand like somewhere else. Don't need that hand at all. Don't need any valves. And so we're not changing notes with just the valves. We're changing notes with something else. And that something else, we're actually going to need a balloon to help us talk about this. So I've got my balloon right here, if you're ready for it. And so the balloon is an awful lot like your lungs as a human. When we fill up the balloon, it's like taking a deep breath in. And then you're all full of air. And the way that you let that air out is a lot like how you let the air out of a balloon. So I know you're all dying to hear this. Here it goes. And if you just let that air out, you get that noise, and everybody likes that noise. And that would be the equivalent of like just letting the air out. But what if you tried to let that air out and you kind of tightened the neck of the balloon? I'm sure you've all done that before at home. As you let the air out, it kind of goes ee and makes that little squealy noise. And so when you pull the neck of the balloon tight, that's kind of like what we do with our lips as trumpet players. We kind of pull those tight and we end up with kind of like a weird face like that. So let's try this on the balloon, because I can actually get it to change pitches just by messing with the neck when it's full. So now our balloon, our lungs are full of air, and I'm going to pull this neck kind of tight as I let the air out. And I can get it to change pitch a little bit. And so that's all stuff that I'm doing with the neck of the balloon, right? Changing the way I'm pulling on it, how tight it is, which changes how fast the air comes out the neck of the balloon. All right, I'll let it go. You're waiting for it. So the moral of the story is the balloon is like our lungs as trumpet players. We fill it up, And then the way we let that air out, whether it's nice and relaxed, that would be kind of a low note with slow air, or we can tighten things up and kind of pull tight, and then that forces the air to go faster through the neck of the balloon or through our lips, which gives us higher notes. And that's how you can play an entire tune with no valves, by using different kinds of air and different levels of tightness here, just like the neck of the balloon, and how we let that air out. So that's kind of the overview of how we can change notes without using our fingers. And it's a good thing that we can do that because we only have 3 valves. So quick math question. How many unique combinations of valves do we have? So I'll start with all open, right? They're all up right now. We could have them all down. That's 2 different combinations. And then we could have one down, or the middle one down, or that one down. That gives us 3 more. Now we're up to 5. Or we could have 6, or 7, or 8. We only get 8 notes on trumpet? Not the case, because we can change notes with our air. Otherwise, yeah, we would be limited to those 8 notes, which is crazy talk. We definitely want to have more than 8 notes. For reference, a piano has 88 keys. They would have 11 times the number of notes that we do. So that would be really unfair if we got stuck with just 8 notes. So let's talk about these fingers, though, because these fingers, when I get the valves involved, they allow us to play all kinds of cool stuff. We would call that a chromatic scale, moving by very small increments upward and downward. And that's actually a very specific pattern, and that's the next thing I want to talk to you about on trumpet. What that pattern is and how and why, and it's actually got a lot to do with how the trumpet is physically structured. So I'm going to flip this trumpet around. So you know that the air comes in here, I blow it out from my mouth and my lips, and it comes in, and it comes around, and as it passes through the valves, when they're all up as they are right now, it actually ignores these tubes that are attached to each of the valves, and it just comes straight out this tube here. Comes out this one here and out the bell. But when we put valves down, it actually reroutes the air through the specific pieces of tubing that are attached to them. So what does a valve look like inside? I've actually got one right here. And so you'll notice there are like multiple sets of holes in this valve. And so the air goes through one way when the valve is up, when it's in that position. But when we put the valve down, a different set of holes is used, and it lines up differently so that we can reroute the air. Like when I put down second valve, which is attached to this little tube here, it actually reroutes the air through that tube. So we add on that tubing. And you probably already know when we add more tubing and instruments get bigger and longer, what happens to the pitch? Does it get higher or lower? We have a longer instrument, it actually gets lower, just like a tuba is really big. There's a lot of tubing there, and so they're super low compared to like a flute. There's not very much piping, and they're very high. And so we actually add a predictable amount of tubing to the path of the air as we add valves. So now let's look at this physically for a moment. We've got this little slide here. We've got this one here. And then we've got this one in the back, this big guy. So which of those is the shortest? And if you're thinking that one right in the middle, you would be correct. That one is the smallest one. So that's going to bring our pitch down by the smallest amount. And in music, we call that a half step. All right, so let me measure with my fingers very scientifically. If that's a half step, what is this one? The answer is it works out to be about a whole step. So this is a whole step. Half step, whole step, and then you get your big mammoth slide back here. Whoa, that guy's long. So if there's a whole step, that one's a step and a half. But wait, this one was a whole step. The little one was a half step. Now we're up to a step and a half if we put those down together, right? We've got a whole step and a half step, and if we put those down together, that's a step and a half. But this one I just said is a step and a half too. Uh-oh. So those should be roughly equal. Let's test our hypothesis. Let's find out if I'm right. And they are. They're the same amount of tubing and the same length, so they give us roughly the same note. Aw, man, we're down to only 7 unique fingerings on trumpet now because those two are equal. So we're down to only 7 unique notes that we get to play. That would be a huge bummer if we didn't have access to all the changing air pressure and balloon stuff that we already talked about. We'd have only 7 notes, and that would be pretty boring. So we can follow that pattern down, right? The half step, the whole step, the step and a half, 2 whole steps, 2 and a half, and then 3 whole steps. We can follow that all the way down, and it gives us that pattern that I used earlier. And then we start to recycle fingerings, and that's where that pattern comes from, is actually the physical structure of the trumpet. So when we combine all those things together, the valves plus the air and the balloon and the lips and all this fun stuff, we get to actually make real tunes out of this that are recognizable. So my first tune for you is one that I know you will recognize. You can put it in the comments if you recognize it. So hopefully we'll get some comments of people knowing what that is. I'm sure everybody recognizes that. And I'll give you another movie theme here. Now that we know all of these half steps and whole steps and finger stuff, I'll give you another one that you're likely to know, so you can put this one in the comments too. So that one's one of my favorite ones to play because it uses a whole bunch of those different fingering combinations and it moves all around. So those are 2 really cool tunes that I like to play. And I just want to talk to you a little bit more about the different variations of trumpet. Because there are lots of different trumpets in the world, and this one is called a B-flat trumpet. And this is a pretty typical one. This is what everybody usually plays in band, and it's basically the standard trumpet, I guess we could say. But that's not the only kind of trumpet that there is. So I have with me another trumpet over here, and if you get really into trumpet playing, someday you will have multiple trumpets hanging around your house as well. But check this out. I'm going to flip it around so we can see. So this is the part, right? The mouthpiece would be over here. This is the lead pipe, and then the tuning slide we said in the beginning of the video, all those terms that we had. And then if we compare them, what do you notice about the lengths of these trumpets? So the top one is actually shorter than the bottom one. Wait a minute, we already know this. If things get shorter and smaller, are they higher or lower? The answer is higher. As they get smaller, think like a flute. As they get smaller, they get higher. So if I play the same note on this trumpet, no fingers, I'll play my low note here. Ba. It gives us that pitch. Keep that in your brain. Ba. So this longer trumpet is actually lower when I do the same thing with my mouth and the same thing with my valves. So there are many different forms of trumpets, and they come in different keys. And we even eventually get all the way up to this teeny tiny little baby trumpet, and we call this a piccolo trumpet. And this is the smallest trumpet of them all. This is a teeny tiny little trumpet. And what I want to point out to you, do you remember all those slides that we had? The extra tubing that got rerouted with the valves on the other trumpets? That's still happening here, but check this out. How many valves do I have now? I have 4. I have an extra one. I didn't have that one before, which is kind of cool. But we still have that teeny tiny, it's this teeny little nub here, and then we've got slightly longer and even longer, and then we have this giant slide over here. So those relationships are still intact and those patterns still stay the same. And then, of course, we get all kinds of fun stuff, not just with our trumpets themselves, but also with other equipment that we get to use, like mutes. And we can put those actually in the end of our trumpet. You just put it in there, and this one's kind of fun. It can change the sound of the instrument altogether, and you can kind of start to make like cartoon noises. Kind of feels like it belongs like on a Bugs Bunny cartoon, doesn't it? And so with all of our different kinds of trumpets and all of our different equipment and mutes, we actually become one of the most versatile instruments that there is. We get to be in marching band, in jazz band, in orchestras, in pep bands. We can be just about anywhere, and it's pretty awesome. So between all of our different equipment, between using the valves to help us change notes over small distances, and using our air, like with the balloon, to change notes over large distances, faraway notes, we have access to pretty much all the notes, and it's a really fun instrument, very versatile, and it can be used in a lot of different settings. So I know I'm partial to it, but I think the trumpet is pretty neat. So I'm going to leave you with 2 last tunes today, and I expect that you'll know these ones as well. So feel free to drop those in the comments if you know which tunes these are. All right, here's the next one. The parents will probably know that one more than the kids, but hopefully some people will recognize that one. And then last but not least, I got one more fun one for you. And so if you haven't picked it up already, I have one specific favorite composer who does a lot of movies. Okay, extra bonus points to whoever drops this composer's name in the comments, because he is my favorite. Well, thank you all for tuning in so much. Again, I am Tierney McLean, and I am the trumpet intern at Eastman Community Music School, where I teach private trumpet lessons and everything trumpet. So hopefully you're enjoying your time off from school and all that, staying healthy and keeping busy, and keep the love of music alive, whatever you do. Have a good week, guys. Hopefully I'll see you all again soon.